gentlemen, this is Billy Alexander, and I am live once again right here on Heel Turn's YouTube page. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a new concept that I have created over the last couple of weeks called the Run In. Now, I could come over here, come over there, maybe, I don't know. It's depending on where I want to put it. But it's called the Run In, and it's basically a concept show that comes in, runs right in and punches you in the face with all the information and some stuff about wrestling, and then it leaves. The whole point of the Run In. That's right. Anyway, guys, if this is the first time you've been watching, I appreciate you taking some time out your day to watch the program. If you are a constant watcher of programs from Heel Turn Wrestling and from myself, Billy Alexander, I appreciate you coming back each and every single week. Today, we're going to talk about what ifs. Now, let me explain a little bit of something here real quick for the people who are new. This is my show. What I say, what happens on my show is 100% all on me. There is nothing to do with Heel Turn Wrestling whatsoever. They have no control, no say, no nothing over what happens on any one of my shows. So, disclaimer coming down somewhere in there, explicit language, there you go. You don't like it, I really don't care. All right, today, now, I said we're going to talk about some what ifs. What ifs in professional wrestling. Now, some of the information I am going to talk about is from a few years ago. So we all know that Daniel Bryan's back in wrestling. We all know that Edge is back in wrestling. We all know the secrets behind some of the other stuff I'm going to talk about. I would encourage anybody out there that would like to leave their comments or their thoughts and opinions after the show here. Man, that really hurt. After the show is completely 100% accepted. That's the point of my shows. I want to be as most interactive as I possibly can with you, the fans, any which way that it happens. Now, again, what ifs in professional wrestling? Some of the stuff we're going to talk about is from the past. Keep that in mind. So, what if Daniel Bryan would have never gotten hurt when he did? Now, again, we all know Daniel Bryan's back. We all know what he's done and everything else. What if Daniel Bryan wouldn't have gotten hurt at the time that he got hurt? Most arguably, one of the biggest and popular wrestlers to come into the company at the time was Daniel Bryan. Yes. Yes. Yes, he was. Even more so than John Cena. Now, that might piss a few people off. I don't care. Point of it is, Daniel Bryan was a great asset to WWE at the time that he came in. He was a very great wrestler on the independent scene. Very well respected in Ring of Honor and everywhere else that he has been. Comes to WWE and he just skyrockets. Then he gets hurt. We all know the story. We all know what happens and everything else. We know where it ends today at this point. But what if Daniel Bryan wouldn't have gotten hurt at the time he did? Daniel Bryan went on and won the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 30. Now, great match. Great build. Everything on this was absolutely great. Except for 2 months later when Daniel Bryan had to relinquish, not lose, relinquish, vacate, give away, stripped, whatever you want to say, of that title due to a neck injury. He'd been out of action for over 7 months. He returned to the 2015 Royal Rumble in a match that only lasted just a few minutes. Woof! Right out he went. Pissed everybody off in Philadelphia. Greatest hostile crowd since ECW days. But we all know that it led to bigger and better things. They were trying to build the prestige of the IC title at the time. They let him run with the title, only to get hurt again. Daniel Bryan, if he wouldn't have gotten hurt at that time then, think of some of the matches that Daniel Bryan could have had over the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. I mean, just think of the possibilities for WWE to market Daniel Bryan and a lot of these superstars, especially a lot of them that were coming in and coming up at that time. Man, I got a hangnail right there, and it is fucking hurting like hell. What if Roman Reigns was not the third member of the Shield? Now, there's a lot of people talked about this for many of years to come. It's hard to picture anyone else now standing next to Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose as a collective known as the Shield. However, there was scenarios that were nearly played out when that trio debuted On the main roster, Survivor Series 2012. It was another great time in pro wrestling. It was another great faction being introduced at that time. They were brought in essentially as mercenaries for CM Punk. Now, we're going to talk about him in a little bit as well. Who was one of the hottest things in wrestling at that time. And arguably, if CM Punk was still around, would probably still be one of the greatest things being done in wrestling at this time. But when they came in and made an immediate impact, taking out anyone from Punk who was involved in the storyline, most notably when they took Ryback and The Rock to start. Punk had recommended to creative at the time, let's not put Roman Reigns in the Shield. Let's put Cassius Ohno, or known by lots of us as Chris Hero, especially to a lot of the indie fans out there, and not Roman Reigns. So could you imagine Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, and a Cassius Ohno, or Chris Hero at the time, before his issue flared up again? I mean, would it have worked? No. I don't think it would have worked at all. Because the way they built the Shield for the first couple of years, with Roman Reigns being the big, muscle-bound guy on the whole deal, and he was the one that just took out everybody. The big Superman punch, the big part of the power bomb, and everything else. Creative didn't want any part of that whatsoever, and they said, no, we don't think it'll work. We don't want to go with it. I think what it was is they were actually scared to bring it up to Vince McMahon and have him go, oh, I don't know if that's going to work for us right now. Blah, blah, blah. So they didn't want to do that. I believe in my end they were too scared to say that. So they wiped that off the table. Roman Reigns is inserted into the Shield. The rest is history. The Shield and the no Shield and then the turn and then the no Shield. They're reunited the Shield and this. The Shield's over. Roman Reigns became part of the Shield. What if CM Punk didn't walk away from WWE? Now that was one of the biggest things at the time in WWE was CM Punk was given live mics to speak what he wanted to speak. And it was all truth. Every bit of it he talked about came from the heart. Especially when he sat down on stage and basically said, screw the WWE, screw you the fans, screw Vince McMahon, screw John Cena, I'm going home with the WWE title belt. A lot of things happened in that big storyline. Vince really thought that he wasn't going to show, really thought that if Punk was to go over, that this wasn't going to work, he was going to walk out with the title. There was a lot of scenarios going on at that time that could have caused a huge erupt. But close to 4+ years now. Now it's beyond that now, since he's been in a ring. He played fiddle to guys like The Rock, Brock Lesnar, John Cena. He chose to step away after Royal Rumble of 2014. Here we are in 2020. Okay? So it's been a while. Citing numerous reasons that included medical issues, the lack of main eventing of WrestleMania, which really should have happened at some point in his career because it would have been a great deal. The build-up between him and The Undertaker was something I hated because they needed something quick for The Undertaker for WrestleMania that year, and they just threw this idea together, and it just didn't sit well with me. They could have done something even better with that. He had the biggest title in the business for more than a year and never was given a spotlight. And it's really a little bit ridiculous if you think about it. So if CM Punk wouldn't have walked away when he did, the scenario may have looked a lot different, as I described a little bit ago with Daniel Bryan. The matches that could have been seen with CM Punk would have been CM Punk and AJ Styles, CM Punk Nakamura, maybe a Finn Balor. I mean, these could have been main event matches, regardless of what pay-per-view it was even on. Could you imagine how the great wars could have been between CM Punk and Kevin Owens? My God. Not to mention matches that could have put the two on the big screen, as in WrestleMania or even SummerSlam. Two of the biggest deals that could have happened at the time. I mean, they could have had major programs. They could have started a program at Royal Rumble, ran right into WrestleMania, trickled all the way through to SummerSlam for the big feud to conclude. Could have even concluded at a Survivor Series. You never know. But instead, the only match that we saw come out of CM Punk in those years of missing was a 2-minute, 14-second loss to Mickey Gall at UFC 214 in September of 2016. Then he was hired for Backstage, a WWE produced show for Fox. He was brought in. It was something to help with the show, help build it, put the ratings out there. Something for CM Punk to come back into the WWE. It could be a stepping stone for something later on. Right now, probably not, due to the fact of the pandemic that's hurt lots of WWE employees, as we saw in the last 2 days, where they have released numerous superstars from WWE, NXT, Backstage producers, coaches from the NXT Performance Center. And I really hate the fact that Lance Storm, I feel Lance Storm took the biggest deal of this, because Lance Storm closed down his wrestling school to take this job at WWE, and yet he was on the list to be let go. And it sucks. But in this type of pandemic, it happens. It's a furlough, guys. It's a furlough. A lot of these guys are going to have jobs here again real soon. He was hired on for the Backstage deal with WWE and Renee Young and all that. He spoke his mind multiple times on certain issues that we've seen in the last year and a half. Some of which got him a lot of heat, and some of them which are still got him on that burner, bouncing off and down off that heat. Will CM Punk ever wrestle in a ring again? I don't know, man. I would have loved to have seen a CM Punk and Stone Cold Steve Austin feud for 6 months. That'd have been a great deal as well. But it just didn't happen. Future CM Punk at WWE inside the ring wrestling again, God knows. Vince McMahon knows. CM Punk knows. Who knows? None of us do. Now, the next two that I'm going to talk about, guys, again, are what ifs. It's how do I word it? It's controversies. It's so much controversies that it has literally caused lots of things with WWE and the families of these individuals that we're going to speak about next. But I am going to bring up some death. And I'm also going to talk about another really controversial death in the next episode when I continue my list of what ifs. But ladies and gentlemen, right now I am going to mention the word Chris Benoit, and I'm going to talk about Eddie Guerrero. If any of these two names whatsoever have anything to do with you not wanting to watch, not wanting to leave comments or your opinions or thoughts, or just don't really know if you want to partake in this, that's perfectly fine. You have the right to do that. I also have the right as a broadcast journalist to bring you anything I possibly can that's entertainment for wrestling, and that's what I'm doing. So, what if Chris Benoit had not died? Now, we all know the tragedy. We all know the stories. We all know what we're being told happened. But we're not being told the truth. And I'm not a huge conspiracy theorist, but I've watched enough of these things. I've seen enough of the reports. I've read enough reports. I just don't know if Chris Benoit actually did this. The way that Chavo Guerrero and some of the others talk about how Chris acted over those last few days, I'm just not sure. Hopefully one day the real truth comes out. And if it doesn't, and Chris really did this, then goddamn. Most controversial and craziest thing to ever happen in WWE, and that's saying a lot. Chris Benoit's death in 2007 is unbelievably a sad murder-suicide involving his wife and his young son. Huge impact on professional wrestling world, not only just in WWE, but all over the world. Chris Benoit wrestled everywhere, guys. Chris Benoit wrestled the WWE, New Japan, ECW, WCW. Chris Benoit wrestled everywhere, okay? He's a very well-known name, just like Eddie Guerrero. Chris Benoit, it wasn't just for the obvious reasons, but I mean, you just don't kill your wife and kid. Following his death, WWE aired a great tribute the next show with details still emerging on what had happened. And once they got those details, the police said it happened, and the people that were there at the crime scene say that happened. You know what they wanted to feed the media that happened. WWE literally took the eraser and erased every existence they possibly could of Chris Benoit from WWE. Now, you can still see lots of his matches on the network. Disclaimer comes across, of course. but he's never mentioned on television. There's no trace of him on the website. Now, that may have changed. I haven't looked at the website recently. But as far as I know, none of that's changed. The impact of his death in the wrestling business changed things inside WWE forever. He won the world title in arguably the best triple threat match possibly to ever be shown on WWE, which was between Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and Benoit. After all that, he was pushed right back down the card in the years that followed, so the issue of him remaining the top card isn't even an issue here. It's a bad thing because Chris Benoit was a technical wrestler, a great technical wrestler. He performed very well inside and outside the ring, and he did some great things in the wrestling business. I still like to watch a lot of his matches from the past. I really enjoyed his matches with Eddie Guerrero at New Japan. Great stuff when Eddie was under the mask. Spoiler alert if you didn't know that. One of the biggest impacts of his death was how performers were monitored, and extremely important because the drugs have been issued in the wrestling business for a very long time. The death of Benoit really brought that up to light for a lot of the upper people in management that really said we got to do something about this. The wellness policy that we all know today was implemented following the death of Eddie Guerrero. More on him in a minute, of course. But the Benoit tragedy is the event that made people stand up and shout things out that needed to be changed right fucking now. The Benoit situation would have never happened. Perhaps WWE wouldn't have been protecting their athletes the way they do today. That could be a very big issue if stuff like this would not have been brought to. It's a sad thing about what Chris Benoit did or didn't do. It's a sad thing that we lost 3 people in the wrestling business. 2 of them very much in the wrestling business. They could have done something today with a lot of these younger athletes. Could you imagine Chris Benoit and even Eddie Guerrero being coaches at the Performance Center, teaching a lot of those guys coming out of the NXT, grooming them up, ready for the roster? Could you imagine? Man! Could you imagine Chris Benoit in a Finn Balor match? Could you imagine a Shinsuke Nakamura and a Chris Benoit? Could you imagine a Velveteen Dream and a Chris Benoit, an Adam Cole and a Chris Benoit, or even with an Eddie Guerrero? Just think of the possibilities in those matches. Chris Benoit's not here. His family's not here. And due to the circumstances behind everything, Chris Benoit has been erased from the world of wrestling in many cases. What if Eddie Guerrero had not died? While the Chris Benoit tragedy was shocking and surprising due to the graphic nature of the event, the death of Eddie Guerrero was just really sad. There's no secret that he was battling addiction for so long. We even heard Vicky talk about it multiple times. Vicky Guerrero stated herself that there was a time where she went to leave with the children, and she looked at Eddie, and she looked up to God as she walked out the door and said, if you're going to take him today, take him when we're gone. I don't want to come home and have it happen in front of us. Do it while we're gone. Eddie Guerrero had finally gotten his life on the right track, only to have his life taken away way too soon at the age of 38 in 2005. The years of abuse to his body wreaked havoc on his heart and was found by his nephew Chavo in a hotel room in Minneapolis. Now, there was supposed to be a pay-per-view. Guerrero was supposed to be there. They did a wellness check. They went in. They found Eddie on the floor. Guerrero's death made WWE really look at how they monitored the performers, and their wellness policies was introduced a few months later. Like Benoit, you have to wonder what would have happened if Eddie had not passed away. As far as wrestling goes, even at the age of 38, Eddie was better than he had been in the ring at the time of his death, and anything and always was looking up. He got over the hump, and he won the WWE Championship in 2004, defeating Brock Lesnar in one of the greatest matches that you can ever watch. Successfully defended it at WrestleMania 20 in a great match with Kurt Angle. After he lost the title, he entered a long program with Rey Mysterio before getting back into the title scene in 2005. In a cruel twist of fate, Guerrero is said to have scheduled to win the World Heavyweight Championship in a triple threat match against Batista and Randy Orton the week he had died. So they were ready to put him back on that pedestal and launch even more with Eddie Guerrero, but he had passed. There had also been rumors of the program with Shawn Michaels. It was set for WrestleMania 22. Could you imagine Shawn Michaels, Eddie Guerrero. Whoo! That would have went well beyond WrestleMania 22. And one of the greatest matches in history, of course, if it would have happened. Unfortunately, we'll never know what could have been and how long Eddie Guerrero could have lasted at the top of the card in WWE. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for the run-in today. We are out of here. Sound of Music, not the movie or anything like that, but the sound of the music you're going to hear is brought to you by bensound.com. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay home. The pandemic is real. Thanks again. Heel Turn Wrestling right here on YouTube. Franchise Takes 5. I am Billy Alexander. Guys, it's time to go. Leave. Goodbye.